thing is that every time a colleague journalist is killed, you feel that you're next, and it's more like racing against time to document as many stories as you can before you get killed or before it's your turn to be bombed or to be killed. And this is what actually keeps us going as journalists. The feeling that you're racing against time, that you need to document the stories before you're killed.
How are you? How are you doing today?
Well, still alive and kicking. But how I am, I don't really actually know. I haven't actually thought of this since a while, probably since the 7th of October. I know I'm still alive, unlike around 62,000 people who have been killed over the past 19 months. I know I'm still struggling to survive, just like over 2 million people in Gaza, but I really don't know how I am.
Do you feel like you haven't had a moment to breathe since October 2023 with everything that has been happening in Gaza?
Yes, actually, no one in Gaza has actually had the chance to pause and think of how they are, for example, or if they are going or doing well. It's all about trying to survive now, all trying to just avoid the bombs, stay alive. So if we can call it a name, it's about just staying alive. I myself am still actually forcibly displaced. I haven't returned to my home until now. Yes, I have returned to Gaza City. I was forcibly displaced to the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. But even when I returned to Gaza City, I still haven't returned to my home because it's damaged and it's uninhabitable at the moment. Also, it's located in an area that is described or maybe labeled by the Israeli occupation army as a dangerous area. So it's we can say it's a compound crisis we're living here. Beside trying to survive, beside trying to stay alive, we're also struggling with hunger, with starvation, with lack of healthcare, and with the constant feeling that you might be displaced at any given moment now.
Maha, can you describe to me how it is living in Gaza and at the same time working as a journalist?
Being a journalist in Gaza, particularly, is not like anything else. It's not like being a journalist outside of Gaza. The profession itself, the work itself, is totally different. Here, you don't just report on stories, you report on your own stories. You report on crises and issues that you can relate to. For example, when I report on the starvation crisis, I report on it while I myself am hungry, literally and honestly. When I report on displacement, for example, I report on it while going out from my shelter to meet people in other shelters, for example. You relate to everything, single story you report on. And the thing is that you do all of this while trying also to stay safe because you're a systematic target. Actually, you're a target since the beginning of this war, since the 7th of October. Journalists have been a target. We're talking about over 200 and I think 20 people, Palestinian journalists, have been killed so far. We're speaking about one journalist every 2 or 3 days being killed. And this is a very, very large number. If we're speaking about a very small area of 2 million residents just scattered in this small area, and many of them are journalists trying to report on the truth, you feel that you're a target just for being a journalist. Your mere profession is what actually could endanger your life, and not just your life, the life of everyone around you, your family, your friends, your colleagues, the people you are seeking shelter with, inside the shelter itself. You all the time try to just conceal the fact, actually, and it's sometimes funny that you cannot, for example, wear the press vest in the street because people would be afraid to stay in front of you or walk beside you because they know that you're a journalist, then you're a target, and they might get killed with you. And I think that the people outside of Gaza might look at the victims or the genocide as statistics, mere statistics, just dealing with this whole crisis as a piece of news, for example, or some statistics, etc. And the thing is that we're living this story every single day, and there have been, I have documented dozens of stories, hundreds of posts I have posted on social media, for example. Many of them were on the ground experience I have been going through, stories, etc. I've been living, or maybe things that we have gone through, feelings, etc. And despite this, despite all these stories, there have been hundreds or thousands of things that we are going through every single day, and they are unspeakable. Actually, how can I speak about how I every time before bed I think that this might be my last day, for example, so that I start praying and thinking that what would I do, for example, if I just opened my eyes and found myself under the rubble. There are millions, actually, millions of feelings, millions of things that are unspeakable and the world does not know about. And this is the worst part, to feel unseen, also unheard, despite all of this happening, all of this live streamed genocide on screens. People are still cannot actually, let's say, process the extent to which this has been a crisis, a catastrophe for Palestinians here in Gaza.
You have said something very profound, that Palestinians are feeling unheard, they're feeling unseen. What do you think needs to be done for Palestinians to feel heard and to feel seen?
Whenever I remember, for example, where in my first displacement shelter back in Zawaida in the central Gaza Strip, we, for the first time, had the opportunity to open the television. We didn't have, of course, electricity. Electricity and water were cut off since day one of this genocide by Israel. But relying on solar panels, we, for the first time, switched on the TV and could see protests around the world taking place in Europe, in the US, and other areas across the world. And it was actually, let's say, some kind of fulfilling feeling. It was like a slight of hope amidst all this misery we were living. We felt that someone or people around the world are starting to move, to take action, actually. But 19 months later, we can see that actually no tangible steps were taken by the governments of these countries. Because what matters a lot, what matters most is the sanctions, for example, the actions on the ground, according to international law, international humanitarian law that we have been taught for years, even in schools. And the thing is that most of the mainstream media, particularly Western media, have dealt with the Palestinians as mere numbers, statistics, for example, and if they felt or if they dealt with Palestinians as stories, as names, they would actually make the victim or the victim in Palestine equal to the perpetrator, for example. The narrative, the approach, the policy, the editorials in their platforms, etc. They were all, let's say, deceiving, not just to us as Palestinians, but to all of humanity. They were many pieces of news, many reports, many stories I have been reading under bombardments, and they were completely inaccurate. And this, I think, what made Palestinians around the world, not just in Gaza, feel that they were deceived by the international community and particularly by the Western media.
Have there been moments when you felt like you can't do this anymore? You can't do the work of a journalist anymore? You almost reached the brink mentally and emotionally.
There have been moments where I felt that I couldn't take one more image or one more scream from people I report on or document or interview, one more goodbye from people or from the hospitals where I was reporting, where I still report on stories. I have found myself questioning many things since the beginning of this war. For example, I have been questioning the mere idea of human rights. And besides my work as a journalist, I work in the field of human rights. And I have been lecturing actually people about human rights and international law. It's really funny because you find yourself actually questioning the mere or the very things that you have been teaching to people. I have been questioning justice. I have been questioning humanity as a whole, even hope sometimes, questioning whether all you're doing is actually worth it sometimes, especially in a time when you see that the world is not actually moving at all. Nothing is going on. No action is being taken, despite all of these stories that have been documented, all of these stories that have been broadcast on television, on mobiles, etc. It's exhausting, but you manage somehow to keep going because you have an immense responsibility to keep going.
When you're living in your community and even working there, do you sense that there is still hope for healing and a restoration in Gaza?
I think that healing might look like, for example, children going back to school. We're talking about children not going back to school, not going to school for the past 2 years now. Maybe it could look like parents finally no longer having to choose between food and safety, for example, or people being able to sleep without the sound of drones or bombardments, etc. But more than anything, I think that healing would actually start when there is justice. The perpetrators are brought to justice, and when people actually feel heard and seen finally after all these years, when they are allowed finally to live as human beings, not just like survivors for this blockade of this occupation. More than anything else, I think healing will only come when justice is done, when the perpetrators are brought to justice, and when we feel that we're seen, we're heard, and that we are finally allowed to live as human beings, not just as survivors.